Hello, Chiquis!
And welcome to Chatty Amigas, a podcast where two friends approach everyday problems and find practical solutions.
We are your hosts. I'm Mafe.
And I'm Ella. And guess what, Chiquis? Guess what?
Guess what?
Today we get a treat. And we have a co-host, our Chatty Amigo, Scott. Welcome, Scott! Woo!
Hi there. Hello. Thanks for having me.
We're so happy. We're so thrilled to have you on here today, Scott. Thank you so very much for taking time out of your super busy schedule to be here today. Please, Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell the Chiquis out there that don't know you what a man you are.
Well, let's see how thankful you are in 40 minutes out here. Well, I am Scott. I grew up in northern New Mexico in the southwestern part of the country. I am a family man. I've married for almost 30 years, have a 23-year-old daughter. We're living in northern New Mexico right now, which is where I grew up. I come from a family of ranchers and farmers and manly men.
That's right. And you have pets. You have cats. Tell us about your cats.
Oh, don't get me started. When we moved, I grew up on a farm, right? So I always had all kinds of animals. And when we moved away, first to Colorado and then to Alaska, we were renting, so I couldn't have as many animals as I want. And I always said, when I go back home, I'm going to have fruit trees and I'm going to have animals. And the first thing we did when we got back here is I planted fruit trees and I have chickens and ducks. I had a duck who attached himself to me and we named him Manuel. So he became Manuel Pato, and he recently was eaten by a coyote, but
oh my goodness, that's so sad.
I'm sorry.
I'm not laughing because I think that was funny. I know it sounds funny on a podcast to say that. So that's
so sad.
It's sad.
It's fine. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
oh,
it was, but that's where my duck went. And we have a dog. Her name is Bunny, and she's a Belgian Shepherd, a police dog.
Nice.
She wasn't on duty when the coyotes got my duck. She was somewhere else. I don't know what she was. And then we have 3 cats. We have Charlie, who's been with us for a while. He was a stray we picked up in Taos, raised him, and he's actually the king Mac Daddy of all cats. He's awesome. And then we have Jimmy, Jimmy and her brother. Her brother passed unexpectedly, so Jimmy just she's a tripped out cat. She's got one green eye and one blue eye, and she's a female orange tabby, which are pretty
Wow.
She's really neat, but we sometimes think she might be autistic a little bit because she stares at you. When she stares at you, it's like she's seeing into your soul, you know.
She's special. She's special for sure.
Special. And then we have La Negrita, actually, Sombrita, which means little shadow in Spanish. And he was a stray who turned up after Jimmy's brother died. Sombrita showed up one day digging through the trash outside, and she wouldn't let me catch her. So I set a live catch trap for her. And sure enough, in a couple of days, there she was, mad. Oh, man, she was angry to be caught. And it took a long time for us to tame her. And eventually, she decided that I was her human, and she doesn't really like anybody else, but she loves me. And so she sits and watches TV, and she's here with me right now watching the proceedings, and she's my little baby. I really love. I've always liked cats. I like every animal, if you couldn't tell. I mean, there's not an animal, but my fondness for cats has really grown in the last year or two. I'm going to be that crazy old cat man that sits on the porch like with a cup of coffee, 30 cats around. I'm not far.
With 30 cats around, you said I can't. I'm done.
I was gonna say I don't think you're far from there, Scott. You're getting pretty close.
Yeah,
but it's
corner. I mean, I've got the old man part and I've got the cat part. I'm not crazy yet, but maybe that's
so funny. It's awesome when a cat makes you your human, or animal. When an animal decides, yes, you're my special friend. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm honored.
Well, and my wife and daughter, it irritates them because she's okay with them. She doesn't hiss or anything when they get near her, but if they try and pet her or get near her, she'll tolerate it for a few seconds and then run away. But me, she jumps up in my lap and she's just a fur box, and she just, yeah, she decided I'm her human, and that's the first time that's ever happened. But it makes me feel pretty special.
Well, that's really cool. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about you. We really appreciate those stories. They're very nice. So I don't know if you can tell today, but we are catering this episode for the male Chiquis out there. But of course, everyone is more than welcome to stick around, listen to the whole episode today. Seeing that this topic isn't something Mafe nor I can 100% relate to, being of the female species, we are elated that Scott is here to enlighten us with experience, and I think it's going to be wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. So everyone loves being around a man's man, a cool, confident, and collected individual. So today we spill the tea on how to be a man's man.
All right, so we found this great article that I feel is wonderful in explaining what is a real man or a man's man. Everything will be in the description down below, so feel free to take a look at it if it interests you. There are 4 main ways that we're going to discuss that a man can be a man's man or a real man. The way they described it in this article was REAL, so REAL, the acronym, and it stands for responsible, eclectic, authentic, and loving. So that is something that a man should strive for every day. So we'll start off with the first one, is how to be a real man. Step 1 is be responsible. So what exactly does that mean? That means you take 100% ownership over everything in your life. Everything you do, everything you say, you have to be accountable for all your actions. This includes the good and the bad. You cannot be afraid of owning up to a mistake. So, by having this in your life, you can change anything about your life you don't like. You will own your life. So that's something that's very important, is how to be responsible. And we'll talk about 5 different ways you can show this responsibility. Do you have any thoughts on it, Scott?
I do. I had my doubts going into this about that I was going to agree with so much, but this article really does hit it on the head. And I think that responsibility is essential for a man. A person who's trying to shirk responsibility or not own up to perhaps their bad action is very much not a man's man, in my opinion. I think that a man stands up and admits his mistakes, takes credit for the good, and takes responsibility for the bad.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it makes someone where people can respect and trust, because if they're going to own up for mistakes, then they're definitely going to want to hear what they have to say when it's something good or when they have advice, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea of just shirking or trying to, we all know people who sort of slither out of taking responsibility for things. And there's a lot of adjectives that come to my mind, but manly is not one of them for somebody that demonstrates that personality trait. It's not.
100%. That's true.
So one part of the responsibility was honesty. So honesty, as we all know, is and should always be the best policy. we like to be honest here. You might be able to get away with a little lie, right? People sometimes try to say or do a little lie, but it will literally always catch up with you. The truth will always come out. You're better off just being honest from the get-go. Part of how to be a real man is telling the truth no matter what. Don't take the easy way out. Tell the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about what a real man is, do you ever think that a real man is a liar or dishonest or sneaky or crooked? None of those things come to mind when you think about a real man. We have images in our mind. Maybe we had a very strong father figure, or we looked up to a media personality. I'm a lot older than you guys, but when I was growing up, there were movie stars like John Wayne and Clint Eastwood and these guys, and they're still around to a degree, but back then, I mean, they were the stuff, and they didn't lie. You know, they took everything straight from the hip, you might say. And so, yeah, I think honesty is an essential part of being a real man. And it's kind of gone away, honestly, in the society that we live in now. Yeah, it's gone to the wayside, and that's unfortunate, because it gives men a bad name. Dishonest men, men who you know, especially when we're talking about relationships, men who are dishonest in their relationships with women uh, are kind of like the worst sort of lowlifes, I think.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would agree with you in that one. So I get it. Totally get it. I agree. And then another trait to that piggybacks with the responsibility is compassion. So it's a trait that many men lack, or I think they have a hard time figuring out personally. Those that lack in this compassion trait, they need to look at people for who they are and understand that we all grow up with prejudices. They need to recognize their biases, and divorce themselves from them. Be slow to judge. Everyone comes from different walks of life. They all deserve kindness and respect from you.
You said something earlier on, and I forget the exact phrase, but yes, you know, compassion. If there was a school, dads are teaching their sons how to be men, a lot of times compassion would not come up under this subject, but it's key. The ability to be compassionate is a hallmark of a real man. A lot of times, I think young boys grow up with this rough and tough ideal of a real man. I don't care. I don't care what I did. You know,
Right.
I wrecked into your car. I cut you off. I did this or that. Well, that's your problem. I'm a man. But that's not the way it should be, and it only comes across as a negative thing. It's never being incompassionate. That's probably not. Is that even a word? Incompassionate. Lacking
We're gonna
compassion.
say yes.
I'm gonna say yeah, go for it.
It's a word, right? But lacking compassion is not a trait that comes to my mind when we're talking about a man's man. A man's man can be very compassionate. Should be.
Should be. And I think that comes off as being fair, because if someone shows compassion, they're fair. People trust them. Oh, and you know what this reminds me of? Of like when people tell guys, don't cry, real boys don't cry, or like you shouldn't cry. I think that's horrible, because you're telling children not to show emotions or cry. Like, how are you going to tell a 6-year-old not to cry? Like, granted, I'm not saying men should start like bawling everywhere. Like, we all need to be balanced about how we handle things, right? Like, I don't feel like I should be crying everywhere either.
Right.
But if like you are dealing with like a death, or if you're getting married, or if you're at a funeral and you feel like emotion or something stirred, I don't think there's anything wrong with having some tears, personally.
Oh, well, you know, I agree with you 100%, but let me tell you, I mentioned, you know, I come from a background of very rough, manly men. I mean, it's just how we were. My older brother says we were raised by John Wayne, not to mention him twice in this. But that, you know, we were taught, and I think it might be a cultural thing too, maybe not just you know, this machismo thing, but you know, if you're going to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. That's what our parents taught us. And I have to this day a really hard time crying over most things, but there are two things that I can cry about in a split second. One is my pets. If I lose a dog, or I've got something, you know, just, oh my goodness, I've bawled more tears over dead dogs than I care to count. And this isn't odd, but it surprises me a little bit. Anything to do with my daughter, I'll just well up with tears in a minute. You know, she and I are tight. I mean, she's my baby, and she was an unexpected blessing, and she's been the best thing that ever came into my life. So, you know, for example, we went and did some volunteer work many years ago, actually. But in the course of it, she was going to go stay with some friends in New Jersey, and I was going to stay in upstate New York. Hadn't occurred to me the whole time we're planning the trip, and oh, this is going to be so great, and well, everything was wonderful. We flew out there. We got to the friend's house. Actually, they picked us up at the airport in New York, and we went out to Long Island. Everything was good. And then the next day they're driving out to where I was going to go do this volunteer work. And it occurred to me that for the first time in her little life, we were going to be separate. And man, I lost it. It was, well, I was bawling like a baby. I couldn't pull it together. And then, and she was with friends. She was going to go see New York City. She would have a great time. She was completely A-okay. But the thought of separating from her, just it, you know, they gave us an afternoon to get ready for, you know, working the next day. And that afternoon I spent laying on my bed trying not to cry. It was the strangest thing. And even now I think about her getting married or going away, or you know, her having a bad time or anything, and I can just tear up in an instant. So I cry for those two things. But I'd tell you the truth, I don't think I cried like at any of the funerals of people who were very, very close to me. I couldn't let it loose there. You know, I've had horrible accidents. I got attacked by a dog last year. He tried to tear my arm off. I was in the ER getting flown out by helicopter to make sure I didn't lose my hand. And, you know, I felt like crying, but I just couldn't cry. And that was something that was put upon me by my very manly dad. So yeah, that's an interesting subject that you bring up there.
That is interesting. I mean, I'm also don't feel like everyone should cry for every, like, okay, it's a funeral, you have to cry. It's not obligatory. Like, I don't cry at funerals either. Weddings I do now. Ever since I got married, I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful, their love, and I start crying. But each person, I feel like if you have a moment where you want to just let it out, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like you have your pets, your daughter, like these are things, it's a big deal. They're heart tugging things. It's not like you're crying because your shoe strap broke. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, I think repressing it can be unhealthy, but letting it all hang out too often also goes on the other side. You know, you get people who, for lack of a better term, are crybabies, and it's almost like they're crying. You say, "Hey, feel sorry for me. I'm crying." Nah, that's not okay either. But somewhere in between needs balance. But a manly man can cry. He just cry too much.
Yeah, it's a good balance. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that, having good balance, but I also was gonna say that, I mean, not one shoe fits all. You know, not one thing is gonna make you cry. Not one specific moment in your life. It's just like Mela said. I mean, she used to not cry at weddings, but now she does because she got married, and now marriage is something that's more special to her. So of course, like for somebody, like, you know, for a man, there's certain things that.
Is that how you took it? I thought she cried because she's feeling sorry for the people getting
Scott.
Awesome.
No, and you know, and for a guy, there's certain things that mean a lot more than others that, you know, make you cry. Like, for example, because your daughter, she was an unexpected blessing, like you said, and she has been the best thing in your life. So of course that tugs at your heart. So of course not everybody has the same thing that tug at their hearts, but it's okay to cry if you feel like crying, if the moment grants it.
Yeah. So moral of the story, be compassionate, and if it moves you, let it go a little bit with some tears.
I agree.
Yeah. So the next thing is fairness, which also goes hand in hand with responsibility. It's needed to combat our prejudices. As humans, we love to classify things and put them into a box. We cannot do this with people. By being unfair, you limit your outlook and probably miss many opportunities just because you think someone is something they aren't.
Wow. There's a lot that goes into that paragraph, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Somebody else say something while I think about that.
It's very well said.
Well, it's true. And I think it's just a society we live in that has unfortunately classified every human aspect of everyone's life into a box. And unfortunately, some people have done that with actual humans, right? Like, you know, you classify them, or that's why it says to just not do that with people, because then you limit your outlook and you miss opportunities by meeting certain people, or by, you know, missing a chance to do certain things with certain people just because you have classified them into a box per se.
You know, and I'm going to have to really, really walk this path carefully here so I don't step outside the lines. I think fairness is essential. It is a huge part of being a manly man, because the opposite of it is you started off, fairness is needed to combat our prejudices. Prejudice, prejudging people is a horrible thing that humans do to one another. And it basically involves looking at a person and saying, I like this person because they are this way, or I don't like this person because they are from that country, or something along those lines. Growing up on the farm where I grew up, we often had immigrant workers. I was the go-between between them and my parents, because my parents didn't really speak Spanish, and I was young and able to learn, and I really liked it. So these men would come here, and they were super hard workers, and they were excellent workers on the farm, and they probably had kids my age back home in Mexico or Guatemala or wherever they came from. And so they had a soft spot for me. So they treated me so good, and they went out of their way, because I was the interpreter, to teach me Spanish and teach me Spanish well. And they were just fantastic with me. So I grew up, quite to the contrary of middle-class America, with this huge, wonderful, high esteem for immigrant workers and the minorities of any class. I've always had a soft spot for them. So this thought that you bring out here, fairness is needed to combat our prejudices. That's huge. That I hadn't considered that when we're talking about the subject of manly men, but that's a biggie. I really appreciate you saying that and bringing it out. It's huge.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of everything being by New York, but I think that this is something where we just have to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping a foot back and being like, oh, the tendency and the patterns I see are XYZ, because that's how we're made, right? It's a way to be safe. Like, are you safe? Like, we want to say to somebody safe. So I don't think there's anything wrong with being cautious and keeping a foot back. But then it's like, all right, let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
Humans they run the gamut from good to bad and everywhere in between, and prejudging anybody is just it's a slippery slope. We ought not do it.
Yeah, there's good and bad in everything and everywhere we go. You just have to, like, all right, let's give you a shot. Like, you scared me a little, but I'm gonna watch you. Let's see what happens.
Okay, but we can all agree that the food from Mexico is the best, right? We can say that.
No. No, I think everything has its beauty. I'm Portuguese. I can't say that.
And how are you gonna say that to a Colombian, Scott? Come on.
You know, as soon as those words left my lip, I realized who I was talking with, and I'm like, well, here goes the edit button. That one. You know what, man? My daughter spent 3 months in Colombia, and she ate pigs over there, my dear. So, you know, I don't know, man.
I love Colombian food person.
No, she ate like a queen.
No, cuy. She.
Oh, that's right.
They have that in Colombia? I thought they just have it in Ecuador and Peru.
It's the ways where they were in Colombia. It was closer to the Ecuadorian side, the Ecuadorian border.
And, you know, I mean, actually, I say that jokingly. I'm pushing your buttons, okay? That's the rest of the audience needs to understand that Mafia and I go back a ways and we tease each other. So that was a joke.
Time.
But, you know, I was really proud of her. She sent me pictures of, she went with a very open mind. She said, I'm just going and I'm going to just do this thing. And so her, and she was in an area that wasn't wealthy. It was very rural. And for the people that she was with, to have a special dinner to really put on the feast was to have one of these cuy. That was a big deal for them, and oftentimes it was, you know, a financial sacrifice. I don't know what it would be comparable to maybe here in the United States, how people will have a great big turkey dinner. Well, she said it felt like that when they busted out with the cuy. You know, you were a privileged guest, and so whether she liked it or not was secondary. The fact was they were doing this out of appreciation and love for her, and so she enjoyed it a lot. And we're totally getting away from the manly subject. I'm sorry.
That's
But
fine.
that's
Thank
what
you for
that's what
sharing.
we do. You know that's how we do in this podcast. We kind of go off about a lot of things, and then we just kind of bring it right back, and that's what keeps it light around here.
Well, you know what triggered that is the thought about food, and I jokingly said Mexican food is the best. I mentioned to you that, you know, I grew up with these immigrant workers, and so we had these two trailers that were, you know, in an L shape down in the orchard. My folks had a farm and they raised apples, and so when the men would come to work, they would camp out in these trailers, and they'd make a campfire every night, and they would sit around the fire, and, you know, they would sing and listen to music and drink beer and have their supper, and I would go eat with them. I was a little kid, but, you know, I it was the coolest thing ever. So sometimes they would eat some pretty radical stuff. I know for a fact I ate a couple squirrels.
Oh God, no, stop. Nope. That's crazy.
They caught a rattlesnake in the orchard, and they killed it, and they skinned it, and they cooked it over the
Oh
fire.
my God.
I've heard of them doing that. And I hear it's really good too.
It was, you know, it wasn't horrible. I mean, I had to get over myself, and the rest of them were eating it like this. So I had to be a man. I had to be, so
Well, I'd rather eat the rattlesnake than it eat me. So
but the thing was, is, you know, the property had a river that flowed through. Actually, the Rio Grande ran on the one side of the orchard, and they would put out fishing lines during the day while they were working, and then they would reel them in at night, and whatever they caught would be part of dinner that evening. So they would catch these big old suckers, and they would make this stew, you know, caldo de pescado, and that's fish stew, and they would cook the whole fish, including the head. And I remember the first time I went to go eat with them, and they were having that, there was this big fish head in a great skillet full of red chili, and it was looking at me. Its eyes were, and I was like, no, man, I gotta draw the line. I can't eat this. I can't eat this. But of course, being a man, I ate it, and it turned out I really liked it. It was good. I just had to get past the eyeballs looking at me.
that is so
Crazy.
funny. It goes actually what you're saying goes well with the next point, which is courage. The courage to eat it, right? So the responsible man will have courage to try something new, right? And also dares to do the right thing. So you ate because you didn't want to offend the people, right? So that's the right thing. It is so easy to get caught up in the groupthink mentality. And before you know it, you're just going with the flow and not realizing what you're doing is wrong. So stand up for what is right and break the mold, go against the grain, and have the courage to do the right thing.
I have a story.
Tell me, please.
Yeah, man, oh man, oh man. Not to date myself, but when I grew up, the hippie movement was coming into its own. It was the late 60s, the early 70s, and all these hippies were moving into northern New Mexico, where I grew up, and they weren't well received. People did not like them. And here where I live, the minority, the majority group was Hispanic. The minority group was Anglo, but Anglos that had been here for a long time. And then here comes these hippies. And so these poor hippie kids would come into school, and they were the target of bullies so bad. And oh, it was awful. And I did not want to be lumped in with the hippies. And if I had been more manly and more courageous, I would have stood up and I maybe not tried to defend every single one of them, but at least not went with the crowd like you just mentioned in the paragraph here. And joined in the bullying. But I did, and it's been something I've hated about myself all my life, is I didn't have the courage to stand up for something I knew was wrong, because I knew it was wrong. Even a little kid, elementary school, I knew it was wrong what they were doing to these poor little hippie kids, but I was afraid of being an outcast, of being maybe bullied myself, which I already kind of was anyway. And so I joined in with, you know, the bad crowd, and I've had to live with that all my life. And it's, you know, it's not like I lose sleep over it or anything. It was long ago and far away, but I always remember that. And I wish I had had the strength, the courage to stand up and say, no, don't do this, or I'm not going to do it anyway. But I didn't. I went with the crowd way back when. And yeah, it wasn't a good thing.
I think that being a child, it's understandable, but the fact that this became a core memory to you and it helps you with future decisions is kind of an awesome thing. I think those hippie children would be happy to have been the sacrifice for you to be a good person moving forward, because they
Well,
do promote peace, love, and happiness. So.
I see a lot of them nowadays because I moved back to the area and they still give me stink eye. They're like, "You traitor." No,
No, do they really?
no,
Oh,
we're all good, okay, more or less, kind of, sort of. But yeah, and you know, it was very difficult times. It was very different. And now the community where I grew up in has done a complete, not 360, what is it, a 180, and
180.
the the uh the demographics of the community, the hippies won that battle, actually. And so now it's a real trendy yuppie. The little gas station and liquor store got converted into a herbal tea place or something, you know. I mean, it's just it's totally different than what it was when I was growing up. But yeah, back then, and there was a lot going on in the whole country, you know. Like in the South, the blacks were fighting for civil rights. Here, the Hispanics were trying to keep their land and get land grants restored to them. And the hippies were actually, their reason for becoming hippies was they were protesting things like the Vietnam War and, you know, what the government was doing and pollution. And so everybody was up in arms about something. It was a very tumultuous time. And it still is tumultuous today, but it's like a different kind of tumultuous.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, courage is a huge, huge part of being manly, and thank you for mentioning that. Though it is a core memory, and it does affect my decisions today. I try real hard to be courageous and stand up for what I think or I assess to be the right thing, and part of it is because of that little tiny inner shame for not doing it all those years ago. So yeah, you know, I can't change history, but I did learn a lesson, so that's cool.
Yeah,
And
that's helped you to be the real man, or the man's man that you are right now. Because
yeah.
like Mela said, those core memories really shape us. And honestly, a lot of those things that happen when you're little really is what makes you be a better person when you're older. And that's, you know, that's where you're standing at right now.
So one thing that helped you as a child that made you the man that you are today is accountability. So not only is the courage, accountability for what you did, you made a mistake, you totally own up to it. That's phenomenal. More people should be like that. So accountable is another way to be responsible. And how can a person be accountable? Well, and my phone just like went blurb. Hold on. You have to be accountable for your actions, both good and bad. What do I mean by this? Right? It's you acknowledge and accept the consequences of your actions. It's extremely easy to blame others for your problems or to do the wrong thing. I think most of us have the natural tendency of wanting to do that. But the responsible man does the right thing. And if he doesn't, he acknowledges that and apologizes and strives to be a better person.
Which is actually exactly what Scott just did, because he recognized, you know, the little thing that happened when he was a child, and he recognizes it and now has been striving to be better ever since.
That's interesting. Yeah, I kind of view this paragraph or this thought in maybe a little bit different from what we've been talking about. Yes, accountability means recognizing the things that you did wrong and hoping to change them. I think also the paragraph says, yeah, something interesting. It says, it is so easy to blame others for your problems or to do the wrong thing. And don't we see that? And isn't that just a real undesirable trait in anyone, man, woman, or otherwise, to engage in something or to be a certain way, and instead of taking accountability for it, say, I'm like this because I want to be this way, and that's all there is to it. We blame others. We say, I'm like this because my dad didn't hug me, or I'm like this because my teachers were mean to me, or I'm like this because, you know, whatever. And that is not a manly quality either. You know, a lot of these things that we're describing as manly qualities, the good ones apply to either sex, really, and it comes down to good human. But we're, you know, this is the subject we're talking about. So what is it that makes a good man, or makes a man become a man's man? Well, yeah, accountability for your own actions, for your own attitudes. That's a very desirable trait to have. Blaming others for why we are the way we are. That's what you see when you're looking at, you know, these crime shows. I killed 36 people because, you know, my grandpa said I was fat. You know, it's like, what? Come on. If you're fat and you kill people because you're evil. No.
Not because you're fat.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So, but yeah, good point. I read this information in preparation for talking with you guys tonight, but hearing you vocalize it, it really makes it come alive. It's very interesting, this conversation. I hope I don't keep you guys up all night, because I could talk for hours.
I love good stories, so we're good.
No, this is gonna be fantastic. This is gonna be the best episode.
Yeah,
One of the
thank
best
you.
episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for also being a part of it and like giving your input and personal experience. I think it's wonderful. I think it's very wise.
I'm hooked now. I want to start a podcast.
Heck yeah.
The man's man.
That's right. So,
but you know, I really don't view myself as a man's man at all. I mean, I have an ideal of what a man's man is, but myself, I fall short on many levels. But you know, it's nice to hear you say it. Keep saying it. It makes me feel good.
Well, it's good to
go ahead, Mafe.
No, I was gonna say it's good to recognize talent. I'm a firm believer of recognizing real talent and real good quality when you see it, and that's you, Scott. You honestly are a real man's man. You're what is it called? What are they? What is it that people say? A man. It escaped my mind. It's a saying. It doesn't matter. Proceed.
Renaissance man. Renaissance man? Is that the word? No. Okay.
No, kind of like.
I'm already making out the check, Muffet. Where will I send it to?
You can just do a blank check. That'll be fine. No, you do. You're a great man, and I think that everybody that actually knows you, Scott, that listens to this podcast, because a lot of our listeners are from our area, from New Mexico. You know, Albuquerque, all of those friends from Santa Fe. They're gonna be like, yeah. So when somebody talks about a man's man, that's Scott. That's literally you.
Yeah, and I think that. Go ahead. Sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
That's very flattering. I hope that's true. We'll see. They might throw around too.
I think that a big way to know that a person's a man's man is if they don't think they're a man's man. That's humility. So, good job. Keep it up. Don't think you're a man's man. Everyone will think you are.
That's the criteria that I'm a man among men. Is that what you were thinking a while ago, Muffet?
There you go. There you go. Moving us right along. So step number 2 on how to be a real man or a man's man, right, is to be eclectic. And the dictionary definition of eclectic is deriving ideas, style, or taste from a broad and diverse range of sources. Basically, don't be boring. It is very easy to become laser focused when your career and only studying and reading about that. Well, that is important to a certain degree. It is even more important to branch out and learn more about everything. So first of all, this will prevent burnout in your career. If you eat, sleep, live, and breathe your job for too long, you will burn out. It is only a matter of time. So find a hobby of interest outside of work. What do you think, Scott?
I really agree with this. And I think it applies to various aspects of life. Even the way we dress, you know, like I said, me growing up, a man only wore blue jeans and boots. That's it. Anybody who didn't wear blue jeans and boots was, you know, kind of dicey. I'm not sure I want to hang out with this guy. In my old age, I've come to realize that manly men come in every shape, size, color, and style choice. That really has very little to do with it. And actually, being eclectic, being broad-minded, having a lot of different interests. A person who's like opposed to a guy who just has one rap, whatever it is. All I talk about is my truck. Oh, my truck this, my truck that. I mean, Fords are better than Chevys. Everybody should know that. Da da da. That kind of stuff. It really diminishes the person. But when a person can talk on a multitude of subjects, a person can relate to many different food choices or music choices, or has read different books, it provides for a well-rounded person who and what does the paragraph say? You won't be as one-dimensional, and you'll be able to relate to others much more. Absolutely, yeah. And what does it say? Get out of your comfort zone and experiment. I think that's a very good point. If there's an individual out there who feels like they would like to be a better person and more of a, if you will, man's man, this would be one area that is within reach to start working on it. There's only so much you're going to do with the body we're given. You're only going to be as strong as you're going to get, and then once you get over 50, that gets taken away from you. But you can always expand your horizons and get to know new people and new things, and the internet, as much as I sometimes despise it, is a wonderful tool for learning about different cultures and places and things, and just broadening your horizon, I think was said in the paragraph. That's fantastic. I like this point, and I agree. I think that's definitely a checkbox for a man's man, being eclectic. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, and right, like you're saying, being strong, that eventually even gets taken away from you as you get older. But the brain is a muscle you can always continue to grow. And I like that, that the second thing that it was mentioned, that
Nate,
is that.
May I? I like your example. We are not sponsored by Ford. We just have to throw it out there. Carry on, Muffy.
Oh gosh. So I like when that it mentions it makes you a much better conversationalist, as well as just being more attractive, right? Because somebody that you can actually sit down and have a full-on conversation with, especially if you're like somebody that likes different topics and talks about different things. It's a lot better to have a conversation with somebody like that, rather than just focusing on the one thing only, right? And you can relate to others as much more. So it's gonna also want to make people talk to you. It's like, that's why you're here, Scott. Is just you're so easy to talk to, because you just know so much about a lot of things, and you just out here sharing with all of us, and it's just that's what makes you eclectic.
This kind of stuff is fun. I really enjoy this. I wish we should have done this a long time ago.
Well, it's better late than never.
That's right.
Talking about individuals willing to change and just look at things from a different standpoint, and you said the brain is a muscle that you can always grow. My daughter and I went to visit a family today that their son and I were best friends with from first grade onward. I mean, and I was at their house as much as I was at my own house. And growing up, the man of the house, he was a 60s, 70s kind of guy, and he wasn't opposed to well, I'll just say it. He used to use marijuana, and did that lifestyle pretty prominently as we were growing up, and yet he was always sort of a double standard. He did these things with his friend, but he was the grown-up. So me and his son, we were strictly forbidden from even talking about it, but it was okay for him. Anyway, that's an aside. So we went to his house today. Hadn't visited him since before the pandemic. Actually hadn't visited him since before we moved back from Alaska. It's been a long time, and he was like almost a second dad to me. So I really needed to go see him, and we did. What's the first thing I see when we're sitting in the living room? I look out the window. There's this huge marijuana plant. And so I said, hey, beep, I won't say his name. I see you're still partaking of the herb there, or something that I said. And he said, no, actually, no. His wife uses it for medicinal purposes. We live in a very rural area, and it's always historically, they'll make it into a balm or a poultice. They'll use it in a number of different ways as a medicine, and it was used that way for centuries, long before the hippies ever came in. But he said, you know, I don't do that anymore. And he's 78 years old. And at the ripe old age of maybe 75, he woke up one day and said, you know, this isn't good for me. I need to stop doing this. And he stopped. At 75 years of age, he changed something that had been part of his life, all of his life. Mm. And his wife, who was always the one that was kind of opposed to that sort of stuff, you know, she was like the voice of reason back in the day. She started, but she makes remedios, remedies.
Medicine.
She makes remedies out of it. The point of that whole little side story there is that he hasn't stopped learning, he hasn't stopped growing, and he's open to change as he sees fit. And I was real proud of him for that. I told him so. I thought that was, you know, it was very surprising, but how cool is that? 78 years old, he decides, I'm going to just change, and he did. That was pretty neat.
I think that's really, I love that. That's a great example. 100%
yeah, that's
agree.
Great. Mm-hmm. So
he's one of those that I've always held up in my life as being a man's man, but and there you go. There's an example.
There you go. Very nice. So now that we've covered this second point and we're kind of halfway through the first article, why don't we just do tea time? What do you think?
Oh yeah, we should do that. Let's do that.
Let's do.
I have talked you guys' ears off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
No, you're good. Let's do tea time. Tea time. So tea time is when we answer one question that has been submitted to us by one of our listeners. Scott, may you please read the tea time question?
Yes, today's question was sent to us by Anonymous, and thank you, Anonymous. His question is, I would like to know what your definition of manliness would be, or what aspects of it are the most noticeable. And you want me to go ahead and give my answer?
Yes, please.
All right. Well, I'm going to say that the definition of manliness would be an individual who has the strength of moral character to stand up for something, to endure something that's unpleasant, to suffer in order to do what he thinks is right. That didn't come out exactly the way I want to say it, but you get the idea. A man's man won't cave in. He's going to stand up for what he thinks is right, and he's going to stick to it no matter what the consequences or the cost to him are. And a man's man will endure hardship in behalf of those he loves without complaining. I think those two sentences kind of define what a man is on the inside. Now, what aspects of it are the most noticeable? That's a different story, because now are we talking physical appearance, or what are we talking about? Well, the question didn't say. It said what aspects of it are the most noticeable. I would say the most noticeable aspect of manliness to me would be the person who demonstrates that strength of character and is a happy, uncomplaining, strong person. Final answer.
I like that. That's
well
deep.
said.
Thank you.
That was very well said. Mela, you had something you wanted to read specifically, and then we'll just go through the article briefly.
Well, there's really nothing to go through the article with. I found an article, 20 things that 20 real women say make you manly. Because at the end of the, go ahead.
No, sorry, hold on. There was something about
the paragraph. Yeah, there's something I researched, but about the standards of manliness. I found it on, it was like Wikipedia or something like that. I don't remember. I don't have the link.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you want me to read that little
paragraph?
paragraph?
Go for it. Read the
So, yeah, the standards of manliness or masculinity vary across different cultures, subcultures, ethnic groups, and historical periods. Traits traditionally viewed as masculine in Western society include strength, courage, independence, leadership, and assertiveness. And you know, that's actually what Scott touched on. So he explained it spot on, honestly.
Much better. And then it also depends on like, what are you asking the question for? Is it for yourself, or are you trying to attract a mate of sorts, right? So if you're trying to attract a woman, there's 20 things that 20 real women say that make you manly. I found this article. I'm going to post it down below. Please feel free to take a gander at it. At the end of the day, it really depends on the person you're trying to attract, how they feel a real man is, right? Because not every woman is made the same. They're not all going to view the man as the same thing. Some women think a real man, and this is based off of what I was reading from what these women were saying. One person was like being self-aware and passionate. Another woman was like someone that can fix things with their hands. You know, it just depends on who you're trying to attract. So
yeah, one of them even said like broad shoulders and larger hands, taller height. You know, it depends who you're asking. You have to know your audience. For some women, like Scott was saying, like being assertiveness and have courage and be strong, stand up for your family. For some women, that is what qualifies to be a man's man. For some others, just means to physically look like big, broad,
blue jeans and white t-shirt with the boots, right?
There you go, the beard.
They drive up in their lifted 4-wheel drive truck, and they first thing they do. And have you ever noticed this? I don't understand this to this day, but a lot of guys who kind of come off as being rather macho, one of the first things they do when they get out of their 4-wheel drive truck is they spit. Why do people spit on the sidewalk? What is that about? You know,
well, that's Melanie's like thinking here, as Scott says these things, but that is more of a southwestern thing. That's not in
I've never seen that in New York. So
I was gonna say Melanie has never seen that. That is more of like a cowboy northwestern thing, southwestern, because that happens a lot in this side of the country.
It's kind of gross.
It's
so nasty.
And I've just seen it all my life, and it's one habit I've never picked up. It hasn't manly. I don't feel the need to spit when I get around, but a lot of guys do. It's something they do around here that's strange. I was wondering.
That's probably because they chew, Scott. So if they're chewing, they have to spit.
Well, see, you know, I mean, back in my, I used to chew when I was in the rodeo and stuff, and there's one kind of spit you do when you're chewing tobacco, and that's sort of a squirt, and that's what that happens. But the one I'm referring to is almost like they're spitting violently, like they step
spit-tooey.
I am. They spit on the sidewalk as hard as they can, and it's almost like they're throwing down the gauntlet. I establish my dominance in this area because on the ground. I don't know.
I figured it out.
He marked his territory.
I'll tell you exactly what it is. There's no rain, so he helps the nature with the spit.
Nope, he does not help at all.
Ask Eric about that. See if he remembers, because you know he grew up here. He knows.
Oh, he knows. He's gonna crack up as soon as she mentions that. He's gonna be like, "How do you even know? You live in the city. You've never seen that."
It's to help with the rain. I tell you, there's no rain. The plants will look parched.
That's hilarious.
I think you're giving them too much credit, but okay.
Yes.
You know, and I realize you guys are wrapping this thing up, but one other thing that I think is very important, because a lot of these qualities that we talked about are really actually good human qualities. They apply to men as well as women. But one thing that I think is very, very important in a man's man is that he treats women with the due respect. He doesn't put them down or denigrate them. He treats them as being intelligent partners in things. I think you can tell a lot about a man by his opinion of and the way he treats women. And I think that's huge, and we didn't touch on that anywhere along the way, but I think that a man's man recognizes the difference between the genders and doesn't doesn't have anything but great respect for women. You know, I mean, he probably, hopefully he had a good relationship with his mother, and it's easy for him. Well, in all of this talking, we talked about, you know, my male influences. My mom and my sisters were, and all the women in my life were very strong, independent, intelligent women. My mom did all the books for our family. I mean, my dad worked for the highway department building bridges, so he was gone all week. But my mom and whatever kids were old enough, she's the one that ran the farm, and she did a fantastic job. I mean, that lady was. I've grown up to this day. I've never struggled with my opinion of women. You know, you get guys who are really jerks, and I just can't see it, because to me, you know, in my mind, and it probably goes back to the women I was raised with, ladies are generally smarter. They're often, you know, they're better in so many ways than your average man at so many things. And I think the man's man acknowledges that and appreciates it. And the man who needs to work on it really needs to work on it.
Thank you. We really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for saying that, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not just saying it because I'm talking to two ladies now. I really believe that, and I encourage that with people who I talk to, because that's a key aspect of being a man's man is and you know, there's that little thing, knowing how to treat a lady. That's not what I'm referring to here, although those are the right words. They're talking about treating a lady, you know, I don't know what they're talking about.
Opening the door for her.
Yeah.
But what you mean is, I actually treat her like a person with a brain.
Yeah. No, and
listen to it, you know, take it under consideration, you know, yeah. I think that a lot of men really miss out on some good stuff in their lives because they don't hold women in high regard, and they should. They really should.
Yeah. No, and you know, Scott, the ones that know you know that is actually who you are. Yeah, it's genuine. You're just not saying this just to say it. So
yeah.
No, we thank you for your honesty. So that wraps up the tea time portion for today. Thank you for submitting the question, Mr. Anonymous. We really appreciate your support. We hope that this helps, and thank you, Scott, for being super honest about this and then opening up. So just a friendly reminder, tea time is officially closed for the season.
So now we're gonna go to step 3. Way to be a man's man or a real man is to be authentic. Yes, authenticity is so important. People can tell when someone's not being authentic, right? So it is the cornerstone of being a real man. If you're not authentic, everyone will notice and won't trust you. Be genuine and truthful. This means telling the truth even when it's more comfortable to lie. This means being transparent and not misleading people for your gain. Men who mislead people may get ahead very quickly, but it will catch up to them and will cause them to lose everything. Don't take that shortcut. If you're ever in charge of a group of your peers, this is even more important. If you are authentic in communicating and expressing your ideas, people will trust you because they don't have anything to fear with you. People often say, be yourself. I challenge you to be the best self, speak from the heart, and genuinely want the best for others.
Wow. What good words of advice there. And I really like that last sentence. Genuinely want the best for others. If everybody walked around, can you imagine if everybody who walked around wanted the best for those around him? What a nice place that would be, you know.
Yeah.
Instead of the paragraph kind of started off with don't lie for your own gain. Unfortunately, we live in a society where lying for your own gain is almost considered par for the course. People almost expect a businessman, let's say, it's almost expected that he's going to lie in his own best interest.
Mm-hmm.
Had an interesting experience about that the other day in my work. A lot of what I do is I go around caring for these water systems that are in small communities around where I live. And we had a flood. It wiped out a water line. They didn't have the parts to fix it. But another community system that I also represent and take care of did have the parts. And I said, because they were scrambling, they were trying to figure out how to get water back on for the community, and it was going to be a long trip to the nearest big town, and it was going to be a couple days before they could get these parts. And I said, hey, don't worry about it. I've got them. I'll go back over to blank place and I'll get them and I'll bring them back. And the first thing they thought, and it didn't even occur to me, but the first thing they thought, and one of them said it kind of jokingly and kind of seriously, says, yeah, and you're going to mark them up 3 times so that you triple your profit selling them to us. And it was like, I hadn't even considered and not even risen up in my heart. I was not even going to charge him for the gas to go get them till he said that. But
be nice, everybody. They'll treat you better. Keep going.
The point of all of that is it's such a natural thing in our society for people to be not authentic, to have an ulterior motive, to be willing to cheat, lie, or steal to get themselves ahead. And no, that's not a man's man. That's not what a man's man does. A man's man says, like in that case, I guess I was kind of proud of myself, because I was like, no, I'm going to go get you these parts. We're going to fix this thing. And, I'm going to charge you the cost it cost me to get them. And that's it. Not elevating myself here, but the paragraph made that statement about people lying for their own gain. And that's what came to my mind. People can be real bad. And so, yeah, a man's man will definitely be authentic. And I think we've talked a little bit about honesty. I think authenticity and honesty go hand in hand. Crucial point to being a man's man.
Agreed. That was very well said. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. So the next step, and the last but not least.
Last but not least.
Thank you for saying it this time. I felt bad last time. I'm like, it's not my thing, it's yours.
It's both our things. It's fine. Carry on.
Yeah, last but not least, how to be a man's man. Number 4 is to be loving. So yes, the number 1 scariest word to men, love, right? So now it is the most challenging part to embrace, and in today's world especially, it isn't easy to love others. So what does it mean to love others? Of course, it doesn't mean to be romantic love with everybody, but just showing unconditional love and appreciation. So most men are brought up with the idea that love is a weakness, right? The strong, silent type has become a standard among men. So you think that if you don't let people in, then they can't hurt you. Well, let me tell you what the guy says. Let me tell you, they still can. So, of course, there's a quote by Rocky Balboa here that says, quote, "Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are. It will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life, but it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done." End quote. So of course, so many people in our world today want to love, and then they crave it as humans. Really, we all crave to a certain extent that type of love, right? So that can be done to, to men too. It can be given also to guys. So
yeah,
it doesn't
romance. Hello.
Exactly. There has nothing to do with your sexuality, right? It has to do with caring and appreciating a guy who has always had your back, men in your life. So it doesn't make you weak if you love. It makes you stronger than most. Most are too afraid to love. You're going out into life knowing that you may get hurt, but that the love you take is equal to the love you make. What do you think, Scott?
Love is a weakness. That is what was beat into our heads all of our life. And wow, what a concept is brought out there. And I like that quote from Rocky Balboa. I might go watch that movie again now. But yeah, I totally relate that idea that gets pounded into us, that love is weakness. Or love is only something that is associated with romantic love, sexuality. I'm in love with this woman. But really, the paragraph made a statement: unconditional love for somebody who has your back. It seems to me that that might be one area, maybe, where we're doing better in modern times than we were when I was a kid. I definitely grew up with that love is a weakness thing. Now that's for sure. I could identify with that. But as I've gotten older, and you know, of course, the people I hang around with nowadays are encouraged to show love. That, you know, that's just part of my circle of friends. So that, I guess, and I've been you know, doing this for so long now, it's second nature to me to go ahead and be able to hug a guy and say, hey, love you, bro, appreciate you. Well, I've been doing that for a long time, but I recognize that out in society as a whole, man, that's not what's taught. So I believe firmly that last sentence says it really nice. The love you take is equal to the love you make. That's a line from a song, isn't it? Like the Eagles or somebody saying that.
It does.
I've heard that before. But I guess for the purpose of our conversation, well, I clearly agree that a man's man is going to be able to feel love and to show love. And we're not talking about romantic sexual love, although that too, you know, that's a beautiful thing also, that men and women enjoy. But the love that we're talking about here, brotherly love, I guess, is what you would call it, right? I mean, brotherly. And that's a huge thing. The man who can't show brotherly love is missing out on something huge. Let's just put it. Maybe a man can be manly and kind of be weak in this area and still pull it off. But how sad is that? He's really missing out on a lot if he doesn't know how to love. So that love question, I feel like I fumbled up trying to answer it. That's a big subject, you know, but I think that I maybe summarize it. Brotherly love is a huge aspect of a real man, and the man who rejects the idea or who misses out on developing and showing love is really missing out on a huge part of life. And I would encourage anybody who's actually giving this thought to widen out in their love, to grow in it, because it's a wonderful human thing. I don't think there's a lot of the rest of creation that has the ability to love, but we do, and I think we should do it more. Final answer.
Very beautifully said. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that, everything.
This has been fantastic, Scott. We cannot thank you enough with everything you've said and the wisdom you have share with us. And like, honestly, the rest of the listeners, this is one of the best episodes, hands down.
Yeah,
well,
gold.
So thank you guys. I feel I was privileged when you reached out to me. I was like, what, are they drunk? Are they you guys are pretty neat. Sorry, well, it was a good idea. I mean, when I first found out that you guys were doing it, I was like, well, this is pretty cool. This is thinking outside the box. You guys are manly men.
Oh, thank you.
I'm taking my hat off.
Nope, I think everything's well said. I sign off to it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Scott, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, and we agree with everything you said. That is it for our podcast today. Thank you so much for listening. We sincerely hope you liked it.
We would love to know what you thought about our episode, so feel free to please leave comments. We would love to hear them.
And please subscribe, give us a like, a follow, and or a star rating if you want to hear more episodes like this one. Please follow us on every social media platforms at Chatty Amigas.
Okay, so we're gonna say goodbye in a second. So say bye with us when we count, okay? Thank you so much for listening, Chiquis. We'll be back every Tuesday with the team. I'm gonna count to 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Bye. Bye.